Syrian President Bashar al-Assad calls his country's crisis a real war. He's calling on his new government to spare no effort in achieving victory. Russia calls for restraint in dealing with Syria's shooting down of a Turkish warplane, urging world powers not to use that as an excuse for stronger action. Massive maritime maneuvers. 22 countries are sending their military ships, planes and personnel to the seas of Hawaii for the largest ever Pacific grill. And as EU leaders prepare for their next summit later this week, we look at the main challenges confronting them in dealing with this 3-year-long debt crisis. Good morning, folks. It's 11 a.m. here in Beijing, 11 p.m. in New York, and it is the break of dawn in Damascus, Syria. That's where we start our coverage this morning, as Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has said his country is now in a state of war. He's ordered his newly formed government to direct all its efforts towards vanquishing the unrest that the country has seen for the better part of almost 16 months now.
As I said in my speech in Parliament, we are living in a state of real war from all angles. When we live in such a situation, all policies and all sides and all sectors need to be directed at winning this war.
In a speech aired on Syrian state television, Assad also dismissed arguments put forth by Western countries who have been asking for him to step aside. He noted that the West always takes and never gives, and that has been proven at every stage of history. He also said that Syrians want good relations with all countries, but they must know where their interests lie. He also said that Syrians would learn to support the government once it better explained its plans for political reforms. Syrian forces are accused by the United Nations of killing more than 10,000 people in the unrest since March of last year. Meanwhile, President Bashar al-Assad's new cabinet has brought in as many as 20 new ministers, and they include 2 opposition figures. One of them is Ali Haider. He's the head of the Syrian Social National Party. He's taken on the post of Minister for National Reconciliation. The other is Qadri Jamil. He's the head of the People's Will Party. He's been named as Vice Prime Minister as well as Minister for Domestic Trade. Both of these parties are under the Popular Front for Change and Liberation, or the PFCL. In fact, Qadri Jamil spoke to CCTV about the meaning of this new government and what it intends to do.
For a long time, we have thought that we should let those who are willing to join in to form a government. Thus, the country can open the reconciliation process and national dialogue. Meanwhile, the door of the government should also be open for those who are waiting to join in until the conditions are mature. A delay in forming the government means more destruction and blood.
The new government also formed 3 new ministries, and that includes the Ministry of National Reconciliation. Jamil said that this move is a positive signal that Syria is trying to find an exit strategy out of this 16-month crisis. He said the PFCL would play an active role in the government. He's encouraging more opposition members to join in. But he did admit that the current administration still holds the keys to power and that any transition would require time. Jamil also noted that the new government faces lots of challenges. Other than, of course, promoting national reconciliation, it has to fix the broken economy, inflation, and also tackle a basic shortage of necessities. Meanwhile, neighbouring Turkey has now accused Syrian forces of shooting down a second Turkish plane, which was searching for the first one, which went down last Friday. Now, the second plane, according to latest reports, has apparently emerged unscathed. But this latest incident has already worsened the tense relations between Syria and Turkey. Meanwhile, NATO held an emergency meeting in their headquarters in Brussels and affirmed strong support for member state Turkey. Fintan Monaghan has the very latest.
Ambassadors from NATO's 28 member states gathered in Brussels to formulate a response to Syria's downing of a Turkish jet. Following the meeting, NATO Secretary-General Anders Fogh Rasmussen expressed strong condemnation of Syria's actions, saying NATO would support Turkey in its response to the incident.
The Turkish permanent representative has informed us about the situation and this specific incident, and based on that, NATO allies have expressed strong condemnation of this completely unacceptable act, and we have expressed a very strong support for and solidarity with Turkey.
Syria's foreign ministry says its air defences had to react immediately. condemning the Turkish fighters' entry into their airspace as a clear breach of Syrian sovereignty. They also claim the plane was downed not by radar-guided missiles, but by anti-aircraft fire.
The hole that appeared on the tail of the plane showed that it was really shot by a land cannon and not by missiles. If the aircraft was over international waters, we would have used the missile and not land anti-aircraft gun, whose maximum range is 2.5 kilometers.
Turkey says the incident will not go unpunished. The government has ruled out going to war, but say Turkey is determined to protect itself.
The rules of engagement of the Turkish armed forces have changed in accordance with its new state. Every military element approaching Turkey from the Syrian border and representing a security risk and danger will be assessed as a military threat and will be treated as a military target.
With the second biggest army in NATO, Turkey has been one of the most ardent critics of the Syrian government since the country began slipping into violence and unrest. Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan, previously a close ally of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, has repeatedly called in recent months for the Syrian leader to step down. So far, more than 30,000 Syrian refugees have crossed the border into Turkey. The country is also giving shelter to the rebel Free Syria Army and the opposition Syrian National Council, which is based in Istanbul. Fintan Monaghan, CCTV.
Russia, meanwhile, is warning that Syria's shooting down of a Turkish warplane should not be seen as a provocation. In a statement out on the Foreign Ministry's website, Russia is urging world powers not to use this incident as an excuse of some sort to try and push for stronger action against Damascus. Now, this was Moscow's first reaction to Friday's downing of a Turkish aircraft by Syrian air defenses. Meanwhile, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, he's expected to attend a meeting on Syria, a contact group, this Saturday. It's being arranged by UN Arab League Joint Envoy Kofi Annan. Lavrov, though, had earlier suggested that that meeting would not produce any results without the participation of Syria's close ally, Iran. Kofi Annan is pushing for this meeting of key regional players as well as Security Council permanent members. The meeting's going to happen in Geneva this weekend. He's hoping to resume political negotiations to try and solve the Syrian crisis. Israeli authorities have begun removing a group of Jewish settlers who had built homes on Palestinian-owned land near the West Bank city of Ramallah. Now, this follows an Israeli court decision that their occupation was illegal. So these settlers will now be relocated to another part of the same West Bank settlement, but that has sparked an angry reaction from the Palestinian Authority. Matt Stuttard has the latest.
Moving out. Under a government relocation deal, 16 families living in the Ulpana neighborhood of the West Bank Jewish settlement of Beit El have begun to leave. Israel's Supreme Court ruled on Monday that 5 apartment blocks in Ulpana must be demolished by July 1st because they sit on privately owned Palestinian land. The settlers are going quietly. The government has promised them 300 housing units in a nearby area.
We're happy about the addition of a new residential neighborhood in Beit El, which is 3 times the size of the neighborhood here. On the other hand, we're very deeply saddened at what, in our eyes, is a tremendous injustice, the decision of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has rushed to give a decision to demolish these homes before the ownership has been determined in the court itself.
But the Palestinian National Authority is not happy. It slammed the relocation deal, saying the settlers are simply being moved to more land owned by Palestinians. Many of the settlers say they were unaware of the ownership of the land.
I don't want to hinder this eviction. It's not happening because of you or us. It is not happening due to the cruelty of anyone. There is no villain here. It's just our weakness, that we are not close as brothers, that we do not know well enough what our place is in our land. We are not fully aware of the rights we have over our land.
Some 311,000 Israeli settlers live among 2.5 million Palestinians in the West Bank. The UN says all the Jewish settlements are illegal since the West Bank was occupied by Israel in the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. The issue is the main obstacle to a resumption of peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians. Matt Stuttard, CCTV.
You're watching CCTV News. We're back in a couple of minutes with these stories and more. Massive maritime maneuvers. 22 countries are sending their military ships, planes, personnel, all of them to the seas of Hawaii for the largest ever Pacific drills. And as EU leaders get ready for their next summit that's going to happen later this week, we take a look at the main challenges confronting them in dealing with this 3-year-long sovereign debt crisis. Welcome back. The Rim of the Pacific Drills 2012 is about to be held in Hawaii and its surrounding maritime areas. 22 countries are taking part this year, making it the world's largest marine exercise. It also sets a record, a new one of that, in terms of both the number of participating countries as well as the overall military strength. 42 naval vessels, 6 submarines, 200 military planes, as well as 25,000 soldiers will be involved in this joint drill. It will go on through to the 7th of August. Now, like I said, this is the largest ever Rim of the Pacific naval exercise in and around the Hawaiian Islands, with one conspicuous absentee, and that is China. And I caught up with our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Daniel Ranches, a short while ago, and I asked him why that's the case.
In a call earlier on to the U.S. military in Hawaii and asked them to say whether China was actually invited. If so, did they decline? If not, why not? I haven't yet had a response to that. But I think it's clear that the military-to-military relationship between the US and China is still a little bit tentative. Yes, there are drills going on over piracy and over humanitarian disasters. And yes, there is progress going on, but at the same time, we have that period where China withdrew from the military-to-military relationship because of arms sales to Taiwan, and so they are picking up from a very early stage. So I suspect that this is more to do with the fact that they still have a way to go before their military-to-military relationship is on an even footing. That's not to say that a lot of effort is not being gone into this. At the moment, as I speak, the commander of the US Pacific Command is in Beijing. There's lots of engagement, lots of policy discussions. So I think they want to move it forward. It's probably that in this particular instance, they didn't feel it was appropriate. But as I say, that's guesswork at the moment because I haven't had the actual word from the US military on this.
Correspondent Daniel Ranches speaking to me a short while ago, giving us his details as to why China is not part of the RIMPAC exercises this year. Meanwhile, let's shift our focus to Europe, and how can we not talk about the continuing debt saga there? Cyprus now becoming officially the 5th country in the Eurozone to ask for a bailout. The country saying, though, it is looking to avoid tough austerity conditions following its application for bailout money. Now, according to the Cypriot government, the EU has so far not asked Cyprus to raise its low corporate tax rates, which encourages companies to try and use the island as a tax haven. On Monday, Cyprus formally applied for loans from the European Financial Stability Facility as well as the European Stability Mechanism. It's looking to recapitalize its banks. The exact scale and terms of the bailout will be decided in the next few weeks and months. Analysts, though, believe that Cyprus may need up to 10 billion euros. That's about half of its annual GDP. Meanwhile, the big one, Spain, and the economy minister there, Luis de Guindos, has addressed the Spanish Congress one day after his country formally requested financial aid for its banks. He says the negotiating terms for a European financial package to try and recapitalize Spanish banks is a very complex process. He's been very keen to try and play down the hopes of a quick rescue for Spain's ailing banks.
As you might understand, it's a very complex package. The negotiation will take time. We are very aware of its extreme urgency, and therefore we are in contact with the European Commission and the European Central Bank with the intention to do all the preparatory work in order to expedite the process.
The minister also told Congress that the European Commission wants Spanish banks, the ones that are receiving the bailout money, to separate their toxic assets from their healthy ones. Now, this method would be used to recapitalize the Spanish banking system. He also said that no new austerity measures have been set by Brussels as a precondition for the loan. The EU offered a rescue package of up to 100 billion euros earlier this month. Initial independent audits from Spain reveal that the country will require anywhere between 50 to 62 billion euros. The final figure, though, will become known only in September. That's when a detailed audit of Spanish banks will be complete. Investors, though, are not buying any of that. They are extremely pessimistic that EU leaders will be able to find a solution for the region's financial troubles. They've been plagued by the sovereign debt crisis for what? The better part of 3 years now. That's going to be the main focus once again, as later this week, EU leaders get ready for another umpteenth time that the heads of state will be meeting in Brussels, as Jack Barton reports from there.
After weeks of speculation, Spain formally requested rescue funds on Monday. Up to